I'm continuing my series on the First Seminole War letters that I'm reading from the letters received at the War Department or the Secretary of War. This is April 1818, and that's Pelecaha in Lake County's Black Seminole town that was destroyed in the Second Seminole War. And it's a good backdrop for what's happening in April and May. This is now going to be the most intense part of the war, so this is going to be a really tough, long presentation for this month. So let me get it started. Okay. Okay, first thing is that General Jackson, he comes down and builds Fort Gaston on the Apalachicola River. Of course, it's in Spanish Florida. Fort Gaston will be an American outpost now from March 1818 up until 1821, until Florida becomes its U.S. territory. It will never be ceded over to the Spanish. So the first part of U.S. territory in Florida is actually in 1818. And so then Andrew Jackson, he's heading towards Miccosukee town. He leaves Fort Gaston with his soldiers, joined by of course, the Georgia, maybe the Creek might have joined him by now. The Tennessee troops are going to join him. He also has some Choctaw. His force will actually number up to 3,000 soldiers at one point, about 1,000 militia regulars, about 1,000 Creek Indians, I think some Choctaw in there, and 1,000 militia. But anyway, whatever division it is. And he's heading toward Miccosukee town. He stops at the village of Tallahassee that's been abandoned, where's now the city of Tallahassee in Florida. In fact, it might be right where I'm sitting right now, which is kind of gives me chills. He found the remains of the town on a lake shore, and he burns the town. So it's kind of humbling to me to think that I'm staying right where that may have happened. And then he continues on to Miccosukee. Jackson writes on April 8th to John C. Calhoun, kind of detailing his work from the previous week. And actually now he's down near St. Mark's. It says, Jackson says, I wrote you from Fort Gaston about my embarrassments, which I labored previous to my arrival at that post, and my determination to penetrate immediately in the center of the Seminole towns. The Army marched on the 26th. On the 1st of April, was reinforced by friendly Creeks under General MacIntosh and a detachment of Tennessee volunteers under Colonel Elliott. The same day, a mile and a half in advance of the Miccosukee village, a small party of hostile Indians was discovered in a marshy pond. The area found to conceal hostile Negroes and Indians ready to give battle. They maintained a spirited attack and then fled. We continued until the night and then escaped. The next day, detachments were sent out to reconnaissance, sorry, secure supplies and reduce to ashes the village. Nearly 300 houses were consumed and cattle and corn brought in. It's kind of interesting to note that Miccosukee town was larger than either St. Augustine or Pensacola and had population greater than either of those cities. So this is no small attack. When Jackson attacked the town, the warriors fighting were really a delaying tactic to give the town time to escape, which we'll see again at Old Town or Bull Lakes Town. In the council house of Kenhaji's town, Miccosukee town, he's talking about King of the Miccosukees. More than 50 scalps were found in a square a red pole was recognized, the bloody scalps of Lieutenant Scott's party. I believe that a portion of the hostiles had fled to St. Mark's and demanded surrender of the Spanish garrison. I marched there and found the Spanish garrison too weak to defend it, and there were indications that hostile Indians were receiving aid from the quarter, and foreign agents were able to conduct their villainy and intrigue and had free acceptance into that fort. So Jackson's given his reasons for the reason why he took the fort. At St. Mark's, their conditions determined me to occupy it with the American force. He basically walks in and tells the Spanish to give it up, which of course they pretty much did. They're outnumbered, outgunned. An inventory of Spanish property and munitions has been taken. A personal property has been respected. The commandant and garrison furnished with transportation to Pensacola. Captain McKeever of the Navy has secured Francis, Josiah Francis, or Hills Hodjo, the great prophet. Oh, there he is. And Homophily Miko, an old red stick. They visited Lieutenant or Captain McKeever's vessel under the impression that he was an English vessel that were giving supplies and munitions to them. Alexander Arbuthnot, a Scotsman, is suspected of instigating this savage war, was found at St. Mark's and is being held until evidence can be convicted of his guilt. So Jackson captured St. Mark's, walked and captured it, had the Navy ship flying a British flag, captured Josiah Francis, and Jackson takes him to St. Mark's, either hangs him there or hangs him on the ship. Just does that immediately with also the old Red Stick chief, Homophily Miko. William MacIntosh and his Creeks continue down to Econfina on April 12th, and that's kind of the largest and costliest against the Red Sticks at that part. The group they attacked there is under Peter McQueen. Jackson's been hunting them since the Creek War. Peter McQueen escapes. He's not captured. He'll die 2 years later down in Cape, Florida. The cause is given from jiggers. Horrible way to go. Anyway, Jackson or McIntosh's Creek forces, they kill 37 Creek warriors and they capture about 100 from the village. Included in there is, I think it's Osceola's grandmother. I think it's Polly Coppinger. And Osceola is a little boy. He's one of the prisoners too. He and his grandmother and mother are released. Polly eloquently negotiates a release as long as they go help convince Peter McQueen to come in. And that'll never happen, but you know, they're not kept as prisoners. Indian agent Thomas McKinney, writing to the Secretary of War, sends that he's sending $2,250 to Major Hughes, the factor at Fort Mitchell. The Indian agent is the one who provides funding for the factor or the Indian trader at Fort Mitchell. The tradesman trades all the supplies. Hughes is dissatisfied on Mitchell's delay on paying of what is due to him. Mitchell's pocketing a lot of the money from that. Of course, he'll eventually get caught. Thomas McKinney to John C. Calhoun, Secretary of War, authorizing funds for the Creek and Cherokee Indian agencies. On the 15th of April, Thomas McKinney writes Secretary of War, says that they're sending the Choctaw youth to school, acknowledging the enclosures and delay in payments on the creek factor from David Mitchell at the Creek Agency. And David Mitchell has his response to John C. Calhoun. He says that the funds of $5,000 have received and built to build and repair bridges on the road between Fort Hawkins and Fort Stoddard, but a reasonable contractor to do the work has not yet been found, and the amount of money is insufficient for repair of the road and bridges. And the Army's going to end up building all that. It's understood to apply to the proper Army officer to appeal for labor of the troops. General Gaines says that only under supervision of the military officers can that be done. He said that, Mitchell and his contractor cannot supervise soldiers building. The contractor is working on the bridges that need the work the most, expected that the road in the Alabama territory will be done by the end of summer. On April 18th, General Jackson reaches Old Town or Bull Lakes Town on the Suwannee River. It's a delayed action, giving time for most of the people in the town to escape. And so, although Jackson and the Creek allies attack it, the official report says that 9 Negroes or 9 Black Seminoles are killed, about 3 Indians are killed, and about I think it's about 10. No, only 3 Negroes are taken prisoner. So they don't get much other than they burn the town and the people get away. They end up going down towards Tampa Bay, some of the Black Seminole towns around there. There's a black freedman town known as Angola that they've been excavating around Bradenton the past few years. Georgia, head of the militia, General Thomas Glasscock Jr., writing to General Jackson, April 30th, from Fort Early. He says he's arrived here with some want for food and meat. Some of my men were nearly out of corn. They're at Fort Early, and they're searching some old houses that's not been consumed. And they came across a man who was lost from Captain Watkins' company on the 2nd of April. So that man's been kind of lost and wandering for a whole month. It appears he's taken with a kind of cramp and unable to move and became useless. He recovered but became completely bewildered and tried to reach camp. He secreted himself in some swamp and wandered from some time, came across a patch of corn in which he subsisted until we found him. He is reduced and appeared perfectly wild. On that night, a trail was found which led to a small hut which contained 50 or 60 bushels of corn, some potatoes and peas, which enabled us to reach the Flint River opposite the Chewhaw village. When arriving 30 miles from there, I sent Major Robinson and 20 men to procure beef. On arriving there, the Indians had fled, the Chewhaw town having been consumed 4 days before by a party of men consisting of 230 under Captain Wright from Harvard. One of the saddest episodes in the First Seminole War is Georgia militia attacked Chewhaw. Chewhaw was a friendly town, had previously supplied General Jackson, supplied his men with shoes and provisions. This Georgia militia group under Captain Wright thought they were a hostile town and came and attacked and killed several people, maybe more than has been recorded. And this is a monument to the tragedy that's now on private property. It's sad that this is not memorialized in like a public monument where people could see, because this is a piece of history that really needs to be remembered. In fact, most of the warriors or the men were away from the village, is that they were with General Jackson. The Chewhaw men were engaged in a skirmish on the Big Bend. That's the Battle of Econfina. Wright received orders to destroy the towns of Fillmore and Oconee. 2 companies of cavalry under his command and Colonel Bothwell, with orders to furnish 25 or 30 men. Or Captain Bothwell. Captain Bothwell disapproved of the plan and told that there could be no doubt of the friendship of the Indians in this quarter, and that John Oponey, had brought in a public horse that had been lost the day before. This availed nothing. Captain Wright crossed the river at night and entered the town. They met an Indian grazing cattle who they made prisoner, who proposed to have them meet any chief for the captain to talk with, which was ignored. Advance was ordered and cavalry rushed forward and commenced the massacre. Firing and the murder commenced. And they killed the chief, Major Howard, who was, I believe, flying an American flag. The old chief just furnished you with corn, came out of his house with a white flag, and orders were given for general fire. Nearly 400 guns were discharged at him. He fell, wasn't bayoneted, and his son was also killed. So this chief, who had just provided corn and provisions to General Jackson, the Georgia militia came and fired 400 guns at him and bayoneted him. 7 men were killed, 1 woman and 2 children. We believe that it's probably dozens more than that is what actually happened. Since then, 3 of my command who were left at Fort Scott obtained a furlough, and on their way, 1 was shot in endeavoring to obtain a canoe to cross the Flint. I have sent an express to the officers commanding Fort Scott, appraising him of the fare, and 1 to Adjutant Porter to put him on his guard. On arriving at Chewhaw, I sent a runner to get some of them in and succeeded in doing so. They are at loss to know the cause of the displeasure of the white people. Wolf has gone to the agent to have it inquired into. We obtained from them a sufficient quality of beef to last us to Hartford, that we should get enough provisions. Jackson writes to Calhoun, John C. Calhoun, Secretary of War, on the line of march 7 miles from Fort Gaston, 12 o'clock. I have received an express from General Glasscock. The outrage committed upon the warriors, women, and children whose men were in the field of service of the United States merits severe chastisement. The afference, too, of the governor of Georgia claims the attention of the president. All the effects of my campaign may be destroyed, and some scenes of massacre and murder with which frontier settlers may be repeated. So, like the Hillubby Massacre during the Creek War, Jackson's afraid that the Chewhaw are going to turn against the United States and start fighting them. On my march from Hartford to Fort Scott, my army was first relieved from the Chewhaw village and every act of friendly character of their old chiefs. The young warriors immediately entered the service, mustered unto the United States under the command of Colonel Kennard, one of the most efficient corps of friendly Indians. What must be their feelings returning home and finding their families dispersed and their old chief murdered? I have written Hartford to have Captain Wright arrested and placed in irons until the will of the president can be known. I have requested the Georgia governor ordered the execution of this order. I shall send a talk to the Chewhaws explaining to this. So Jackson's afraid that his whole campaign may be ended and thrown in ruins because of this episode by the Georgia militia attacking and massacring the Chewhaw village. Jackson writes to Governor William Rayburn, says, on my march to Pensacola, 7 miles in advance of Fort Gaston, I received an express from General Glasscock of the cowardly and inhumane attack on old women and men of Chewhaw village, while the warriors were fighting with me against the common enemy, and testimony of increase of the killings at Cedar Creek. The governor will have to answer why he is making war with a tribe that is peaceful, that is assisting Jackson, and why a cowardly monster in human shape could violate the sanctity of the flag of an Indian chief worn down with age. Jackson's not mincing his words. It seems quite unusual that Jackson's taking the side of the Indians, but if you're an enemy of Jackson, he's going to be the worst enemy you ever had. If he's your friend, he's going to be your best friend. There's no gray areas for Jackson. Jackson says such base cowardice should not go unpunished. The governor has no right to give a military order while Jackson, commander of the military district, is in the field and bring an open violation of treaty with the Creek Indians. Captain Wright must be prosecuted and punished for these outrages and murders. I have ordered for him to be arrested and confined. And you, as governor of Georgia, will carry out my order to aid in arrest and confine Captain Wright and brought to punishment for this unprecedented murder. It is strange how this hero followed the trail of murder of your citizens that would have led him to Miccosukee, which we found the bleeding scalps of your citizens, but there might have been more danger in this than attacking a village of old women and men without arms. This act is a stain upon the character of Georgia. Jackson writes a response to the chief and warriors of the Chewhaw village. On my march west of the Apalachicola, I just learned by express of the unwarranted attack on the Chewhaw village by a party of Georgians, the burning and killing of 6 men and 1 woman. The news fills my heart with regret and my eyes with tears. When I passed through your village, you treated me with friendship and supplied my army with all supplies that you could spare. Your old chief supplied warriors to fight a common enemy. I promised you protection of the United States and the hand of friendship. I did not suppose that there was Americans so base as to not respect the American flag. I cannot bring your men and women back to life, but I've written the president and ordered that Captain Wright be arrested. Return to your village, there you'll be protected, and Captain Wright will be tried and punished for his daring outrage of the treaty and murder of your people. And you shall be paid for your houses and other property that has been destroyed. But you must not attempt to take satisfaction. This is contrary to the treaty. And you may rely on my friendship and that of your father, the President of the United States. I send this by Major Davis, who is charged with the arrest and confinement with Captain Wright. You must not permit your people to kill any whites. This will bring down your destruction. Justice shall be done to you. You must remain in peace and friendship of the United States. The excuse that Captain Wright has made is that some of your warriors participated in the murders in Georgia, and this is not believed. You'll send some of your warriors with Major Dade to Hartford. So going to the governor so Major Davis is going to Hartford, talk things over the governor with some of the Chewhaw warriors, which is kind of cool. So I don't know if he'll cover this, but Major Davis will arrest Captain Wright, put him in irons, and then the sheriff or governor, one of them, will set him free, and Captain Wright will be released. He'll go on the run. He'll be seen heading down the Apalachicola River, and that's the last anybody will ever hear from him. Hopefully the warriors got their revenge on him for such a terrible thing. This is a really difficult thing, of course. And meanwhile, General Jackson goes to Pensacola, in late May, around May 25th, 26th. He takes over Fort Barrancas, fires on Fort Barrancas, forces its surrender, captures Pensacola. It's interesting that the Army reports say 3 Americans were killed and, a dozen or so wounded. The Spanish report that Brian Rucker from Pensacola says that they say that 129 Americans were killed. Who's to say what the casualties are? Maybe the truth must be somewhere in between. General Gaines at Fort Scott writes to John C. Calhoun's. He recommends abandoning Army barracks at Savannah and moving the garrison to Tybee Island, taking account the location for coastal defense of the port and the healthiness of the troops. So that's a lot of material ending April and May of 1818. And we'll continue on.